welcome to Series 3, Episode 6 of In Suspense, a podcast and vodcast for fans and writers of crime fiction. I'm Laura North, and my lovely co-host is, of course, Leslie Cara.
Hello.
Right, our last episode, we chatted to the lovely Rachel Edwards on her novel Lucky, as well as talking about tackling contentious topics, which is a bit of a tongue twister. But it was so insightful to hear how she goes about sort of weaving those ideas into her books, and certainly gave me pause for thought, I think, on topics that sometimes I may have avoided and whether I could maybe put them into books in the future. So definitely worth a listen or watch, I think. And so before we go into what today's topic is, let's have our usual catch up, shall we, Leslie?
Yes.
And so we actually saw each other for lunch, didn't we?
Yes, it was lovely.
A few weeks ago now. It was so normal. That's what was amazing about it, was how normal it felt just to be able to sit and have a lovely lunch and have a chat with you and a few other authors. And I would like to say a very public thank you to Emma Curtis, who over lunch showed me how to make voice notes on the Kindle app document. So as you're reading through your book, you can just add a little note, be like, add a comma here, which was brilliant. It really annoys my husband as well, which is like an added bonus. It's like, what are you talking about? It's brilliant. So yes, thank you to Emma for that. Now, what have you been up to, Leslie?
Oh, well, gosh, it seems so long ago that we went on that lunch, but it wasn't that long ago, really, was it? And it was so nice, as you say, to be back to normal. Although I had a horrible train journey home, but that didn't take away from the lovely day. Well, it was just so packed and hot, and no one keeping their distance. But anyway, that was fine. I survived. But yeah, what have I been up to? I've been finishing my copy edits, and they are now done, and that is such a huge relief because you know how much I've struggled over the past 6 months, and so I think they're now going off to be, for the proofs. So that's really a huge relief, but also worrying because I think, my God, it's going. Nothing more I can do
apart from those. Worry.
Yeah, apart from the, obviously you get the proof pages back and you can make those final tweaks and things, but you can't make too many changes at that stage, can you?
No, but it's so good to have them all done now and have hopefully a little bit of a breather this summer.
Absolutely. And another thing, I love that period when you've just finished a novel and it's sort of, at that stage, and you can start to turn your attention to things that you haven't had time to do, and they might sound really boring things like tidying my study and kind of clearing the decks and getting rid of all old bits of paper and printouts and things, shredding stuff, just getting ready for the next book and the next phase, and that always, I'm a bit of a sort of I'm not really a tidy freak, but because often my study is quite messy, but I like to be organised to start with, and then every so often have a good sort of tidy up.
Yeah, I think that's really cathartic as well, isn't it? To have that tidy up. So it's almost like you're tidying your mind really in a way, ready for the next.
I think so, yeah. And getting rid of old, I know some people might keep things forever. I used to sort of not want to throw things away, and very special sort of emails I'd print out and I'd keep all my editor's notes with my comments on, and then I thought, why am I keeping all this? It's just ridiculous. I need to, it's all online if I need it. It's all in my email folders. So and I've got such a small study that I haven't got room to keep a load of paper anyway. What else have I been doing? Tackling emails and that sort of thing, and admin, doing all those. I still haven't got the Harrogate tickets, but I think that the site tickets aren't up yet, are they?
There's the Rover, isn't there, that you can get if you want to go to all the panels and you're going to be there for a long period over that weekend. Then there is the Rover ticket. But yeah, I used a Rover last time and I'm not sure I really got the benefit of it. So yeah, I'm sort of holding out for the site tickets and hoping.
Yeah,
but great news about the restrictions looking like they are going to be lifted, so hopefully we'll hear soon.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant news. Yeah, I think I got a Rover last time. I'm considering getting one this time. I don't know. There's the other option, isn't it? A digital only version, which gives you the site ticket and you can go and sit in the lounge and watch all the events.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm going to make up my mind on that and keep watching the website just so that I don't miss out. And tomorrow I'm meeting my agent. So that'll be nice. We're going for a nice lunch. She's coming to take me out for lunch, so that's good. And yeah, so it's all. The only thing that could be improved at the moment is the weather. Really, that's the only.
Yes, needs just waiting for the summer holidays to hit in a couple of weeks, no doubt.
Oh, yes, that's right. But I'm also starting to think about ideas for obviously the next books, and I'm sure that my agent will also want to talk about that. You know what it's like when you're just coming out of one contract. So I'm thinking of different hooks, which brings us on very nicely to today's topic, which
Lovely segue.
I know, perfect segue, isn't it? Anyone would think I was prepared today. Which is the topic for today is creating killer hooks. So so I don't know whether what you think about that, Laurie.
Well, I'm very excited about this topic, and I've been excited about it since we talked about it. For me, it feels a lot like, I don't know if it's that I've got a bit more experience in the industry over the last few years, or whether things have changed, but it feels to me a lot like the hook is so important now. So much so that the way I write has completely changed, in that I used to plan out, get a bit of an idea, plan it out, write the book, and then sort of afterwards then try and summarize it into something that sounded exciting. Whereas now I'll get the idea, and if I can't develop that idea into a hook immediately, I generally will not go and continue writing that book. I've got like 5 ideas this year that are just sitting there because they didn't quite have what I think it needed to try and really capture. So I don't know if that's just because it's going to be my new deal book kind of thing, but you really want to go out with a bang, don't you, for the first one, but yes. Or whether there has been a real change. But what do you think?
Well, I think there has been a change, actually. I mean, I used to sort of, when my other novels, I used to sort of start them by thinking of an opening scene, or it was a character or a certain situation or premise, but it was quite nebulous, and I would sort of work it out and sort of come to the hook later, if you like, by sort of writing it. But I think now, particularly at the moment, I'm thinking of almost titles and hooks and one-liners before I start to work out an idea. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I think it's just the way the market is, isn't it, really? I think titles are really important, even though often the titles that we choose aren't the ones that we end up with. Yeah. But if you can think of a really hooky sort of title, half the job's done in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, it does feel like that. I'm still waiting to hear if my book 4 is going to have the same title as the one that I gave it. So it's always exciting to see if they're going to change it or not. So far, every single title has been changed. So.
But you with your book 5 that you've now finished, haven't you? The draft.
Yes, I finished book 5. That's with my agent at the moment. Yeah.
But that was something that I don't know anything about it really, but that was something that you said that you had an idea, a great idea, and you just had to run with it maybe sooner than you would have done normally. Yeah, exactly. Yes, I feel well ahead of the game at the moment. But yeah, I think that had for me that started with this hook that just lit a little fire in me. So yeah, that's really exciting. So yeah, we'll see what happens with that one. Hopefully something. And I expect now, are you at that sort of hiatus period now where you're sort of in between projects? Or yes, I am. So I'm waiting for my book 4 edits back from my publisher, and I'm just this morning I just started tinkering with a new book idea. Way it was just that first chapter where you're really just trying to get the idea of what the characters are like. But yeah, I'm just waiting now. But it's quite nice. It's nice to have a little break. It's just I'm so aware that I could really do with doing the work now, because in 2 weeks' time the kids are going to be off for 6 weeks, and they're older now, and that's fine. And I manage fine now. It's no pressure, but it's just the knowledge that I will have my time slightly more divided, I think. So, but yeah, yes. It is what it is. It's quite nice to have a break as well. Although there's another side to it. You could say you've got 2 weeks of a break where you can really pamper yourself and replenish and recharge your batteries without the kids being around. But yes, that's true. And next week I'm having some new author photos done, so that's quite exciting.
exciting.
Are you? Oh, that'll be good. I can't wait to see those.
Yes, I hope they're going to be all right. So we've gone off to gone
Oh,
well
sorry,
off
we've gone
topic.
right off topic. That's completely my fault
Yeah.
because I think I got the order all wrong, but never mind. Yeah,
No,
we
it's
were talking
fine.
about hooks, weren't
What
we?
about hooks? Yes, because it isn't really necessarily our job, is it, to write the hooks? Because that's much more into the marketing, and that sort of falls into the publisher's framework. But I do think it's important as the author to recognise, to help almost to see what it can be and give it to them and say, this is what I think the hook is.
I think so. I think we've got to sort of create a hooky premise, but
Yes.
I suppose the publishers tend, and the marketing and the sales team tend to come up with how that is worded, you know, and often they come up with a quite a sentence that you wouldn't not have thought of yourself.
No, absolutely.
They've got to have the material, I guess, to work with in the first place, haven't they?
Yeah, certainly. And I think almost them coming at it from their marketing with their marketing hats on can be a bit easier than us who've written now 90,000 word babies of beautiful prose, trying to cramble that into 2 sentences that summarize and engage the reader isn't always easy.
Oh, I know. That's a real skill, isn't it? It's a real skill. Yeah.
But that is luckily why we have got a wonderful, phenomenal guest coming on the show today to talk to us about creating killer hooks. And she has done this time and time again in both TV and books. And that is the very amazing Jo Spain.
Hey, hello and welcome, Jo Spain, to In Suspense. It's so lovely to have you on the show.
It's lovely to be here. Thanks for having me on.
And I must warn you, we have an awful lot of questions for you, but but we didn't know where to stop, actually. We had so many. But first of all, I'm going to read out your bio. Jo Spain is a full-time writer and screenwriter. She is one of Ireland's most successful crime writers. Her first novel, With Our Blessing, was one of 7 books shortlisted in the Richard and Judy Search for a Bestseller competition. And her first psychological thriller, The Confession, was a #1 bestseller in Ireland. Jo co-wrote the groundbreaking television series Taken Down, which first broadcast in Ireland in 2018. She's now working on multiple European television projects. Jo lives in Dublin with her husband and their 4 young children. Jo, I finished The Perfect Lie at about 1:45 last night. I just could not put it down. It was absolutely brilliant. But for the benefit of our listeners and watchers who might not have read it yet, could you tell us a little bit about it?
I've gotten better at doing this over the last few months because obviously there's what I can say and there's what I can't say. Because there's kind of a twisty premise behind this book that we're hoping people, really get into and really buy. But essentially what happens at the start is we meet Irish immigrant Erin Kennedy. And she's left Ireland after a kind of a family tragedy. She wants to get away. She's also an economic migrant. She's gone to New York. She meets Danny, her detective cop husband, who is just perfect in every way. They move to Long Island and they're living this idyllic life. And one morning she wakes up and there's a knock on the door and it's Danny's colleagues. And she assumes, he's going off to work for the weekend. And, there goes our weekend. Behind her, Danny walks to the window of their 4th-floor apartment and jumps to his death. No reason, no rhyme. She can't understand what's happening. We flash forward 18 months then, and Erin is in court being charged with the murder of her husband. Scary point in her life. And that's it.
That was amazing. And it is an amazing book. I actually listened to it on Audible. I listened to all your books on Audible, and I'm a big Audible fan. And a huge fan of yours, Jo, as well. So it's just there's lots of gushing's going to come out of me, so I apologise now. And I really loved it. And as you said, the premise has got quite a twist to it. And I was hook, line and sinker the whole way, to the point where when I'd finished, went and got the book and reread the blurb and the hook and was like, what? It was just amazing, so amazing. And the way you wove those twists in was just absolute genius. Now, as I said, I am a huge fan and I loved The Confession and Dirty Little Secrets. Now, The Perfect Lie is set in the US. And so I was wondering as I was listening, was there a reason you chose to set this story in America when your previous 2 novels had been set in Ireland? And did it require any additional research?
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of reasons. People have asked me, and it certainly fed into it. Was it COVID? Was it not being able to go anywhere? And I've said no. Well, I was editing it during COVID. The idea came beforehand, but it did cement for me that whole feeling of not being able to come home. You know, she's far from home, and that is actually the original reason why I chose to set it there, because like the immigrant experience is so familiar, particularly to Irish and English people. We know what this feels like to be living abroad, but the world is so small now. You can always hop on a plane and come home. But, you know, there's still a distance. If there's a new baby or if there's some occasion in your life, I think that's when people feel, no matter how happy they are where they're living, that they miss kind of home and family and friends. And they just, you know, they can Skype their moms and dads, but they're not there with them, you know. And in my mind, I went a bit further then and thought, okay, that's when good things are happening. What about when something bad happens? Because normally in the situation that Erin finds herself in, she'd have a network, you know, like her dad would probably know a solicitor, you know, they would know the justice system that they're dealing with. And we all know, I mean, I could have picked a lot of places, but the American justice system is quite adversarial. It's quite confrontational. An Irish detective said to me once, like in Ireland and England, it's quite camaraderie. You know, they sit down with suspects and they try to bring them along in the investigation or in the confessional room. You know, in the American system, they sit down and they say, we know you did it. We have you on tape doing it. Your mother has said you've done it, you know, and they scare them almost into saying, I did it. You know, it's really like clashing with what we're used to. And I wanted her to experience this very intimidating, oppressive judicial system when she finds herself in that really scary position of being in court charged with the murder of her husband. And then, you know, it's just not having family and it's just not having things you're familiar with. And I was writing it during COVID and I was like, okay, that is actually, yeah, that's where we're all at now, you know. And then of course, I mean, it is set in Long Island and it's beautiful. And I was thinking, this is where I'd like to have a holiday. And that was the plan, to go research Long Island as I was writing it. So that fell apart. I mean, I could do all the research about the American justice system and everything online, but I normally like to be in a location when I'm writing about the location, and every other single location I featured, I've actually been to. I have not been to Long Island. I've been to New York plenty of times. So what I had to do was, I mean, I was walking around on Google Maps. I was reading everything set there. I was watching everything set there, but I still wasn't confident because I hadn't been there. So I created a fictional town in Long Island, just on the off chance people are saying, you know, oh God, the Starbucks is not in that corner. That's not what Walmart is. Like, because people would, you know, if I chose Bellport or somewhere that's actually real. So it's fictional, but every time she goes out of Long Island, it's to visit somewhere that's actually real. But at least then it's, you know, it's through her authentic Irish voice and it's places that she's seeing through her foreign eyes. So I'm not pretending to be an American while writing it, you know.
Amazing. And do you think that it helps sell books in America if it's set in America versus set in England? That's always one of the questions we always wonder about. And does it help, do you think?
I mean, arguably no, if you're not from America. For me, I mean, I would love to do well in America, but my primary audience where I do well is in Europe. And I think they like to read books set in America. But when you're in America, you like, you know, a lot of people like to read books set outside of where they are, you know. So I know, like, I mean, Louise Penny is huge in America. She writes in, you know, Gamache and Three Pines in Canada. And then the Scandi Noir is really big in America as well. And then Tana French is an Irish writer and all her books are based in Ireland and she's huge in America, you know. So, I mean, I know some authors have done it, like Adrian McGinty and Steve Kavanagh write books set in America. And I think people think they're American, they write them so well. And they're doing really well over there. Certain kind of action novel or, you know, the law room novel. I think if I wanted to have massive success in America, I'd stick right into Ireland because Ireland's so popular in America. But that's not saying I don't want massive success over there. It wasn't a strategic decision to set it there to become popular there. No. I do become very big over there. I'll be on the basis of one of my Irish set novels.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. Now, we heard in the bio, Jo, that you also do a lot of writing for TV. And I think your latest project it's Harry Wilde, isn't it? Starring the amazing Jane Seymour. I don't know whether you want to tell us a little about how that came about and also maybe how different it is writing for the screen from writing, you know, novels.
Yeah, well, it was... everything with screenwriting is luck and being in the right place at the right time, you know, and having a backlog of material. And I was working for a German LA production company called Dynamic. And they had a guy with them who created this amazing character called Harry Wilde and written a pilot. and it's commissioned, and it's an 8-episode series, the first series, and they wanted to bring in a couple of other writers actually to do a few episodes, but they were looking at my scripts because I was working with them, and they sent them to the creator, Dave Logan, and he just said, I'll have her, she can do the other. I'm writing 3 of the episodes. So they brought me in straight away, and we just clicked, which is rare. It's very rare for screenwriters to actually get on as well as we do, because normally there's big egos involved, and there's big egos involved because there's big money in screenwriting. Like it's night and day compared to the book industry. So I loved it straight away. Harry Wilde. And I came to the show before I knew Jane Seymour was cast. Jane Seymour was just a cherry on a very good cake. She's a retired English professor. We originally were setting the show in Cambridge, but now it's set entirely in Dublin. And again, COVID played a hand in that in terms of location. So she's a retired English professor, and she is not a woman who wants to be retired. She's in her 60s. She drinks, she smokes, she shags everybody that she likes. She is a real go-getter. She's really independent, and retirement is not for her. So her son is a police officer, and she finds one of his case books one day, and she gets really interested in the investigation, and through a series of instances she meets this 15-year-old black kid called Fergus, and across the kind of age divide and the background divide, they click and they start investigating these crimes together, and their chemistry is off the charts. They're really funny, they're really smart, they're really witty, and they're going investigating these crimes every week. Her kind of down in a lot of red wine, him trying to get through school at the same time, and I think people are going to love it. They're going to absolutely love it, and she's in that role. You just have to look at her. You just watch her on screen. You're so brilliant looking at her. But it is the difference in terms of the writing. Screenwriting is very visual, and I think you can write books that are visual too, but in screenwriting, you are putting down the words, aware that this is going to be filmed. Every single thing is filmed. So people think sometimes it's all dialogue. It's not just the dialogue, it's the acting, and it's the character and how they're perceiving and their point of view all the time, and it's a collaborative method of writing as well. Then, it's not the same, like we own our books, they're ours. With screenwriting, there's a cast of thousands influencing what you're writing, what could be filmed, what the budget is, and it's probably more rewarding because you get to see it visually on screen. It's certainly more financially rewarding than books, but it's harder. It's much harder.
That's really
so really interesting, isn't it? The difference. When you're writing your novels, do you think about how they would transfer to screen, and does that impact your setting and storyline, or is it just like completely wearing 2 different hats?
I'd be lying if I said it didn't seep in, but I actively try to stop it from seeping in, because I'm adapting a lot of books at the moment, and I know what it takes to move a book to screen, and it's not always the books that you think are going to work, and a lot of the time you are ripping the guts out of a book to bring it on to screen. It's not going to look. Some books do it quite well, and it's almost by accident. I don't think any author, unless they are originally a screenwriter, knows how to write a book for screen, and I'm not sure it would be a good book, to be honest. Like it takes a lot to move it over. If I allowed myself to think about books being filmed, it would paralyze me. It really would, because you're losing the heart of a book, I think, when you're thinking about it being filmed. Like I've seen 400-page books reduced to 1 hour of TV. And when you have that in the back of your mind all the time, when you have characters just inner monologue, or you're describing somewhere that's very beautiful, none of that is needed for screen. Like for screen, you write a house. You could say it's a big house or a small house, or, but it's the art department deciding where they can budget and where that, what they can film. In a book, you could be describing, the facade of the house, the era in which it was built, and you can really get into it, and it's just, there's a love of words in your novels, which there isn't in screen. So I have to completely separate out the thought processes when I'm doing one or the other. I definitely lean a bit more towards the pace of screen now in novels. My novels aren't as long as they might have got if I only wrote novels, and I'm on my 12th now. I think they'd be this size because I'm enjoying writing them, but I definitely write a bit faster. It's just bet into me now from TV.
Yeah, mind you, I could certainly see The Perfect Lie as a great film, I must say.
It's very visual.
I know all the pitfalls of what it would take to film that, you see.
Yeah, you've got that experience, haven't you? So But I've heard in a previous interview that you did, Joe, I've been trawling you online, and I've heard you say that you're very good at being edited, and I wondered what exactly you meant by that, and whether that stems from your experience writing for the screen, and where lots of people are kind of inputting.
I mean, it does, but what helped was I'm married to an editor.
Ah.
And I met him when he was an editor. So I think, I mean, I do have some ego. You know, when I give him my first draft of a book to read and he's saying, I don't understand what's happening here, my initial thought is, why? What's wrong with you? You know? But then when I step back from it, I'm thinking, okay, he's the benchmark. If he doesn't understand what's happening and he's a smart guy, I have not communicated it properly. Like my co-writer always says to me, there's no such thing as a bad note. Now, sometimes he gets notes and he's like, that's a terrible note. So he means it more applying to me. I think if you learn to be edited, you will always make something better. And that's not saying you always have to agree with your editor. Like my editor, and we joke about this, she doesn't quite get Irish humor. And most of my readers do. And sometimes she'll say, I think you could speed this up a little bit here, lose the funny bit. And I'm like, no, Steph, that's what makes these books unique, you know, that the Irish kind of deadpan humor. And people say it back all the time. And she'll say, oh, you're right. But she'll still make it go on the next book, you know, to cut out something funny. So we're constantly having this clash. But on the other hand, she will say to me when something's very slowly paced, she's like, you need to speed this up here. And it's her job, you know, and I'm a firm believer that everybody is good at the job that they're doing, and we should let them do the job they're doing. Because when authors start saying, don't edit me, that's when we have those 700-800 page books, and we think every word is gold, and the reader's going, my God, are we ever going to get to the point? You know, like, that's just, for crime fiction, like, good editors are just, they're diamonds.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. I mean, the editor always makes it a better book. You know, there's no doubt about it. And you know, when you first get those editorial notes, as you say, you think, what? But actually, when they sink in, and you think, oh God, yeah, that's going to make it so much better. And it's always better after it's been through the editorial process. But now today's topic, Joe, that we've been speaking about before, Laurie and I, is creating killer hooks. And we thought that you would be the absolute perfect person to have because all your novels have such fantastic hooks. I mean, I'm going to read out the hook for The Perfect Lie, which is just brilliant. I'll read it out for the benefit of our listeners. He jumped to his death in front of witnesses. Now his wife is charged with murder. I mean, you know, it's, you know, impossible situation. It's incredible. And we were talking earlier about what comes first now when we're planning novels, you know, whether we want to think of the hook right up front and have that sort of, you know, the one-liner that describes the book before we even start to plan or work out whether an idea has legs. I mean, is that what it's like for you? Is that what you do? Do you come up with that hook before anything else?
It's a really good question, because I think there's a bit of a marketing pitfall at the moment for authors, where the publishing industry almost wants us to give them the one-line hook, so they can go out then to the supermarkets and the bookstores and say, here, we've got a great book coming, and here it is in a line, and they're so bought in at that point. And if you actually go through all my books, this plot fell into a very good hook line. The other books, not all of them do. You can't sum them up in a sentence. Like I couldn't sum them up in a sentence. I can sum them up in a blurb, but you really need to read the book to get the magic of the, you know, there's good twists in them, but you've got to read the twists. It can't be done in a sentence. In terms of how I come to plots, I do always think of who's dead and who's killed them. And I do tend to think of the opening scenes first. And I think that might be a little bit of the screenwriter in me, that I see just visually how this opens. And then I'll work on everything else, like building out the motive and the rationale and the red herrings and all the rest of it. And with The Perfect Lie, it was the same with The Confession, to be fair. I had the scene of the confession of the husband and wife watching TV, and a guy walks in and beats the husband to death in front of the wife. I didn't have much else. I was like, why has he done that? And then I twisted it and I was like, he goes and hands himself into a police station then and says, oh, I've had a psychotic incident. I don't know what I did. But the guy is an infamous banker. So how could he not know? So this was I was giving myself a question and trying to answer it. And that seems to be how my books come to me, where I have a question in my own mind and then I've got to fix it for the readers. But it's nice then because the readers come in on the question and then follow your thought processes. The Perfect Lie, I had that notion of the husband kills himself, and then she's in court, but I had nothing else to back up that. That was all I had. It's a great hook, right? But it only works if you can finish the novel. So I had 8 or 9 months of trying to figure out, like, I just put it to the back of my mind. And it's when you're working on constant projects all the time, I find this helps me. I never think about one thing for too long, because I would get that writer's block and I'd be paralyzed. I can put it down, do other things, and just let it simmer away, and eventually it answers itself, and this one did, and it answered itself to me. So obviously I cannot believe that people don't get it straight away. I'm still in shock that people just don't go, that's cheap, that twist.
Oh, that's a brilliant answer.
It really is. Now, you mentioned this just a second ago, you pointed on this, but my next question was, do you think that creating that killer hook is more important now than ever? And how much should an author be thinking about the hook when they're developing their ideas and story, do you think?
I mean, in an ideal world, we wouldn't, I don't think. Like, if in the real world, we know how competitive it is now in this industry, and we know how little book space there is available on the shelves. And I mean, that thing of write for yourself, like, I mean, that's fine if you don't need to earn money from being an author, if you're keeping a journal. If you want to sell commercial fiction, I think we have to be aware that it does help to sell a book. Having said that, the way the industry works, like, I mean, there's 2 books out at the moment too, which have essentially, I won't say what they are because it's not fair on the authors, essentially the same premise. One of them is doing really well because it has kind of the Hollywood film backing and all the rest of it. It's got big business around it. The other one I haven't even read yet. It seems it'll hopefully be a creeper hit because I know the author and she's a fabulous author and I trust her to do something great with that premise. If you constantly wrote what you thought the market wanted from you, I don't know how. I don't know if you ladies could write like that. I couldn't. Like, I can only write the story I want to write. And sometimes when I sent Dirty Little Secrets into my editor, we were a bit concerned because it's a thriller about a gated community and something happens in there and there's a limited amount of suspects. And at the same time, Netflix sent Safe out on, and we were like, this has the same ring of it, it's an exclusive community, somebody's dead, one of the residents must have done it, but they're entirely different stories, and Dirty Little Secrets it was #1 on Audible for nearly the whole year last year, so it caught people's imagination. But perhaps if I'd seen the Netflix thing before I wrote the book, I wouldn't have wrote it, and that would have been a terrible shame.
I think you're right. You have to write the novel that you need to write, and not try and sort of shoehorn your ideas into what you think is going to be marketable. I mean, I'm in that stage now where I'm trying to come up for ideas for my next novel, and I'm sort of thinking of hooks, and actually that's not how I normally work. It's not how I've worked for the previous novels. Ideas have just resonated with me for some reason, an opening scene, a character, and maybe that's how I should be thinking about this next book, because trying to come up with an artificially brilliant hook doesn't seem to be working at the moment for me. But we'll see. But you've got a prodigious output, Jo. I mean, I was looking at how many novels. I think you said just now that you've written 12 novels now, is it?
I'm on to the 12th as of.
On to the 12th, wow. And you write 2 a year, I believe. You write a series, don't you? And a standalone, is that correct? 1 or 2 a year?
I'm down to 1 a year now.
Right.
In the series, and I've put that on a bit of a hold for the moment because I can only write 1 book a year. I'm doing so much TV now. I just don't. I'm not Superwoman.
Well, I'm relieved to hear that because I thought you were kind of superhuman. But yeah, I mean, you've got the novel a year, and you've got all your screenwriting work. I mean, we were just wondering how you did it, basically, and whether you must be driven to write, and to create such a large output of work.
Well, I have to say, when I did the 2 years where I was doing 2 or 3 years where I was doing 2 books a year and TV were the most horrific in terms of work. I wouldn't lie to anyone and say, oh yeah, I can just, I'd only need 4 hours of sleep. Like, that is just nonsense. I was so tired. I mean, I was doing it because I'm the breadwinner in our house. And my husband had lost his job a couple of years ago, and that's when I got into writing. And I want to do it full time. So I need to generate, screenwriting is almost like a full-time job. It's a day job, but that's a job that pays the bills. The books are what I do because I love them, and they're getting better and bigger all the time, and I am starting to earn from books very well. But I was driven to earn, is the honest answer, and the more you do, the more you earn. I mean, you've got a book series out and you've got psychological thrillers out and you're working for TV. Suddenly I was at a point where I was like, okay, this is now my job. It's a sustainable job. And because I'm the breadwinner, it's not just something I do on the side, and my husband's actually taking care of the bills, So that's just like being blunt. You have to work hard when you are, feeding kids.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a job, isn't it? But also, I suppose there is that's compulsion to write as well, because we're all creatives, aren't we? We all need to write, but we probably wouldn't be producing one a year if we were just left to our own creative devices, would we? If we didn't need the money, absolutely.
Now, as we've said, you've got so much experience, Jo, in developing unputdownable stories for TV and novels. So I wondered what advice you would have for writers at the ideas stage of novel writing. Do you have any key steps or tricks that you use for plotting that you think would be great for other people?
I mean, it's a weird one because I know everybody is so different in how they do it. I'm a lot of the time when writers come to me and say I want to write a novel, what we end up actually talking about is they'll say I've started and I've given up, and it's always in that what we call the saggy middle. And I'd be trying to say to them, it doesn't matter what you write. There's something fulfilling about writing the end that psychologically gives you the bounce to know that you can do it. And I think once you've done it once, you can do it again. It's like finishing a marathon, even if it is 8 hours long. The fact you did a marathon puts in your head you can do it, and you can then do it again, and you can, you'll get better and faster and everything. And I mean, it's almost like the ideas are not the problem. The people talking to me, they have an idea, they just can't execute it all the way to the end. And I say to them, but that's the same for me, and it's the same for most authors. It's not like we just sit down and go, hey, I've got 400 pages here of thoughts in my brain and you're banging it out. You really have to think about it. What works for me, I know some people can just sit down and they write their novels when and as the idea comes to them. That doesn't work for me, and I think I'd abandon it a lot sooner if that was my process. I do an outline. So it's, and when you work in TV, you have to do outlines. You're actually commissioned to do outlines. But I will sit down and I'll first the idea will come to me, and that can be just from, sometimes you might be watching the news, or you might hear a conversation, or, we all, particularly if you write crime, we all have the what if mentality. So we hear something and immediately you're thinking of the next, oh, what if, like, what if it's the husband? What if, it's always that you're most people's brains work like that, but crime writers take it to the nth degree. So that will come somewhere in the back of my brain, and I'll let that stew, and I'll sit down then and start fleshing it out just a little bit, just a page, what if that happened? And then I might think about it a little bit more, and I start thinking if I did a novel on this. And eventually by the end of it, I'll have 8 pages just of thinking, start, middle and end. So when I do sit down to write a book, I have thought out the plot loopholes and the possible red herrings. Like, well, what if we thought it was her brother who did it? Or what if we thought it was the neighbor who did it, and how would that look? And why would the police look at the neighbor? So all the time it's in my mind before it ever becomes something on the page. And that helps me sit down and write a novel, but that's my experience, that people will have these great little gems of ideas, and then they'll think, but I don't know what to do with it. But I'm like, but think about it, write it. If you start writing it, you will come up with solutions as you're writing it. But that doesn't mean write the novel. It just means just write down your thoughts and put them on a page, and that will help you process what's in the back of your brain somewhere.
That's really good advice. I'm going to use that today, in fact, for planning out my book. Now, you've said elsewhere that there's nothing new anymore and that all plots have been done, which I think is a very true. So how do you try and keep things fresh? Do you have a process?
I mean, I always think even though I say that, I always follow it up with, but everything is fresh when it comes from you because you are unique, you know. So no matter what, like I could say right now, I'm going to write a crime where somebody walks up to a lecture podium and shoots a lecturer, and you do the same, Lauren, and we would write two different books,
Yeah,
you know, because
so true.
we're just the people we are. I think it helps to be, if you do read a lot, you are aware of what's there. And if you have a creative brain, you will always be able to think of something you'd have done different. Not always. Sometimes you read the perfect book and you just think, oh, I just want to rise to that level. And for me, that's always been, well, a lot of the Agatha Christie's, their plots are so perfect. And then I remember reading more modern times, Pierre Lemet's Alex, not knowing there was a twist in that book. And when I read that book, I just thought this is a crime master. You know, I would aspire to write like this guy. But I mean, if you always try to put your personal twist on things, even if it's just a character, you know, of your character, if you have seen this plot kind of done somewhere and that character was nice in it and you decide to make it a bad character who's a narcissist, that's freshening, you know. But ultimately, I mean, all crimes come from the seven deadly sins. And we can't reinvent the wheel. What you're trying to do is reinvent the perspective and reinvent the people it happens to. And then you've got a bit of a mystery.
That's so interesting. Thank you for that advice. So you write loads of TV and books stuff. Do you get much time to read? What do you enjoy reading? Are you reading anything good at the moment?
I don't anymore. I like, honest to God, I, like all of us, I get books sent to me all the time, and my heart just be breaking for those authors because I know what it feels like to be waiting for a quote. Like I'm the same as anyone else. Like, you know, I am like, please read my book and say it's good. And I get books coming in now, and my big issue at the moment is I'm reading scripts all the time. So I keep my holidays for pleasure reading. And that's when I kind of pick the best of the proofs that have come into me, or books that I just authors I love. And there's some authors who I find them just reliably good every time. So I'm reading Steve Kavanagh's new one, The Devil's Advocate, at the moment. And because he's so different to me as well. He sets these kind of crime novels in America and they're court novels. Notwithstanding the little bit of courtroom drama and The Perfect Lie, I'm not a court writer, but he is, and he's a former barrister, and he does it so well. For me, it's escapism. It's not a busman's holiday. I'm not trying to figure out what he's going to do in the book. I'm just reading it and I'm enjoying it, you know. And I do always, the books that always make it into my suitcase for holidays are always crime. They just are. Like I would read anything on a normal timeline. If I wasn't busy, I'd read any book. I'd read the back of the cornflakes box. But the books I want to read are crime novels.
Fantastic. What about you, Leslie?
Well, I agree. It's a perennial problem trying to keep up with proofs. It's just impossible, isn't it? And often it means we can't read the books that we really want to read because we just haven't got the time. Well, obviously, I've just finished The Perfect Lie, which is behind me here, and I've also finished Invite Me In, Emma Curtis, and loved that. And I'm about to start All For You. I mentioned that last week, but I hadn't actually started it. So that's Louise Jensen, All For You. And just moving into my sort of summer holiday period. So hopefully I will be able to catch up on some of the books that I said I was going to read last year and never got round to. And you, Laurie, what are you up to at the moment?
Well, I haven't done much reading at all. I think edits have really taken over. And I was reading one of my mentees' books as well. So that's taken over quite a lot of time as well. But I did manage to squeeze in Not a Happy Family by Sherry LaPena, which I really enjoyed. Really kept me guessing the whole way through. So that was a good one for me. But yes, I've been a bit slow as well the last few weeks.
Actually, I have got another one to read as well. Sandy Jones, The Guilt Trip.
Oh, yes.
Yes, I've got the PDF of that.
Oh, yes, and I loved that. The Guilt Trip.
She's coming on our show, isn't she, for
Yes,
our last episode? So lots to do. But now, I think, have we come to the time for the fun question, Laurie? Is that time? Yeah. Okay, so right. So in your novel, The Perfect Lie, Erin is on trial for the murder of her husband. So we were wondering, and it's a jokey question, obviously, if your family were to put you on trial, a sort of family trial for something that you do that maybe annoys them or upsets them, what would it be?
Oh, there's a list.
I've got a list actually here.
I mean, I am like, well, for a start, like I'm pig ignorant when I'm in the middle of a project. Like I work from home, like, you know, most of us, and there's 4 kids in this house, and my husband will say, like, you know, and to be honest, I'd co-sue him and make him go to this court case with me, because when he's watching football, he's in the same vein. You can have a whole conversation with me and I won't hear a thing. Like I'm just doing what I'm doing. And I think as well, they all know I'm very blunt in my opinions. So sometimes, like, my daughter would be saying a friend did this, or, Siri has come on for me. Siri's trying to you. I will just bluntly say what I think, and sometimes I think that's because I'm still distracted with work, so I don't filter my opinions, and I just say, well, I never liked him anyway, ma'am. So, and yeah, I'm judgmental as well. So there's probably a very long list of ways that I upset my family. Now I'm thinking about it, I'm adding things.
What about you, Laurie?
Well, I actually asked my family this question.
That was brave.
So my daughter said that we get these packs of sweets that have teeth and lips in, like the little red lips and these little squishy teeth. And I eat all the lips before she goes near them, and she hates me for that. So that was for my daughter. And my son hates that I call him my little chicken. I'm always like, hello chickens, how are you doing? So he said no to that. And my husband had a big long list, but at the top was stacking the dishwasher incorrectly according to his standards, and my messy drawers, because all drawers that belong to me are just overflowing with mess and destruction. I think I take myself to court for that, but there's nothing I can do about it. I don't know where the mess comes from.
You haven't read Marie Kondo, or is it Marie Kondo, The Art of Tidying?
Yeah, no. I think I'm really organised with my work, and my head's really organised, and I think that the mess just stays in the shut drawers. What about you, Leslie?
Well, I'm, as again, a long list. And I think, like Joe said, I'm quite sort of, when I'm in the thick of sort of writing, my husband sort of cooks meals and I'll sort of eat them, and then I'll go back and work and I'll be thinking about it. And so I'm probably not the most sort of lovely person to live with when it's, come to the sort of crunch time of meeting deadlines and things. But I think on a more sort of light-hearted note, whistling, I'm a great whistler. Although I'm not a great whistler, that's the thing. I whistle a lot, but it's tuneless, and that annoys my husband a lot, as does my noisy yawning. I'm quite a loud yawner. And another thing I do is I mix up all the lyrics of songs. I'm not very good at retaining lyrics unless it's sort of songs from the 70s or 80s, which I remember, but I'll sort of start singing one song and it will sort of morph into something else, and he'll say, that's two different songs, what are you on about? So yeah, I'm very annoying, I'm sure.
My Glee show was about mashing up, so I'm like, that's a skill you have, you should monetize that.
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't thought of that. Good point.
That's very good. Well, are we all going to be in court for a long time then, based on those answers? So we're now on to our quick fire round, Joe. And so I'm just going to fire questions at you, and you just have to say the first thing that comes to your head, okay? They're not scary. Do you prefer ebook or paperback?
Paperback.
Tea or coffee?
Tea.
Sweet or savoury?
Sweet.
Do you write at a desk or on the sofa?
Sofa.
Are you a beach holiday or city break?
City.
Wine or cocktails?
Both.
Cat or dog?
Dog.
Word or scrivener?
Word.
Dinner for two or a noisy night out?
Noisy night out.
And is it books or screenwriting? Sorry to ask that one.
Oh, naughty. What's the audience for this?
Got to say books, I think, haven't you?
Yeah. All the way.
It's so hard, isn't it, when you do more than one thing and you love them both, I think.
Yeah.
That's really difficult to come up with an answer for that.
Yes, but you did very well then.
Really well, yes. We put you on the spot there. Laurie likes putting people on the spot. Well, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for, Joe, but it's been such a pleasure having you on In Suspense. We've really enjoyed listening to your wonderful answers, and you've given us all food for thought, and given me food for thought as I start thinking of my next plot. So no, it's been great. Thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. And as I said at the start, I am a huge fan of all your books. So thank you so much for coming on the show, Jo. It's been a real pleasure for me. And I've been very excited about this episode for quite a few weeks now. And in our next episode, we are, as we said, interviewing Sandy Jones, who wrote, whose latest book, The Guilt Trip, is out very soon. And we're going to be talking to her about moving the writing goalposts, which I think is something we can all relate to.
Which leaves us with the final task of saying thank you for watching In Suspense. Oh, I think we synchronised. Yeah, we did it. We absolutely did it. Oh, thanks very much, Jo. That's been brilliant. You've been fantastic.
Thank you, Jo. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your week.
I will. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.